from Force 13 HQ and from our contributors from around the world. This is May 10th, 2018. Welcome to Force 13's Tropical Weather Update. I'm Nathan Foy and we're entering May the 10th, 2018. There's no named storms active or any depressions, of course those counting as cyclones. 2 invests active at this time, and we're going to tell you about them now. This is how we're looking with the new format. Let's take a look then at the Eastern Pacific area. Invest 90E is located in the basin, well out at sea, with a 50% chance of development according to the National Hurricane Center at their last update. The zone there shows the storm's projection over the next 5 days, the system, and as stated it says 50% chance. That is actually down from earlier, and that may be on the decrease again later on because the storm really isn't looking particularly good. We'll get some visuals on that shortly. Let's also take a look at the West Pacific, where we've got Invest 97W, which we're rating at 30% chance and is heading towards the northwest, moving just north of the Mariana Islands. May affect some of the very northernmost of the northern Mariana Islands as it moves off towards the northwest. Bit of a complicated picture with that one, which we'll look at on the models shortly. Let's go back then and take a look at the satellite, and we'll look at all of the views. This is the Eastern Pacific right now, of course. You can see what's going on. The Invest is pretty visible there on towards the right hand side of the picture, and you can see that it's swirling all right, but there isn't too much going on near the storm center. There's not much of convection. I would suggest that the circulation itself is a little bit vague, and it's not looking as good as it looked yesterday, for instance, and its movement generally at the moment is still pretty westward, but is likely to turn a little bit more towards the northwest. There isn't anything going on in the Atlantic, but here's the latest imagery nonetheless from the GOES-16 satellite. Of course, night falling across most of the Atlantic at this time. And you can see very little is actually going on in the basin, certainly in the deep tropics. There's nothing going on at all in what you would call the main development region, and that's obviously normal at this time of year. We do sometimes look towards the Western Caribbean and off the east coast of the United States at this time of year, but looking at it right now, not much doing at this time. The West Pacific looks like this, and you can see Invest 97W just entering daylight there, and as you can see it is quite a lot disorganized actually, and it's really struggling to get itself together, so fairly low chances it could have tropical storm force winds either now or later on, but whether it gets circulation or not, I would say chances are very, well, not very, but some rather low for the circulation to become apparent. What else have we got? We've also got the Australian region there for reference. Nothing going on in that region for the time being, and nothing going on in the Indian Ocean either. Looking at the latest NOAA floaters, you can see those 2 systems in more detail right now. Invest 90E at the top row, and Invest 97W at the bottom. So there's the latest on that, and it looks like dry air intrusion may be going to affect both of those systems, certainly 97W right now, and quite possibly for 90E too. Just in case it is something else, let's take a look. We will get to in fact, let's take a look at the sea surface temperature. We may as well do it in order. This is the latest sea surface temperature maps. A little bit small on the image, I grant you, but the temperatures around Invest 90E right now is around 26 to 28 degrees Celsius, I believe. Fairly low latitude, so sea surface temperature is certainly warm enough. For Invest 97W, it's around 27 degrees Celsius there as well, possibly pushing 28, especially as it moves off towards the northwest, so SSTs certainly aren't an issue. The forecast, which looks like this. This is what we're looking at in the Atlantic over the next few days. These are the winds that we're looking at here on these model projections. And if you see any green colours, which is what we're looking for, those denote tropical storm force winds. So as we enter these next few days, as you can see, it doesn't appear like much is going on in the Atlantic. Of course, we did have that model run and that system earlier that did have a 0% chance, according to the National Hurricane Center, and that did indeed verify. Here's the Eastern Pacific. This might be more interesting. You can see the system 90E there on the bottom of your screen, and you can see it possibly develop a little bit more, but looks like it's struggling, definitely with that circulation as we enter the weekend, and with those wind speeds. Some models do still predict it will become a tropical storm, but this, the GFS, certainly isn't, and it gets dissolved back towards the equator again early next week, looking at that. And nothing else behind it. Let's take a look at the West Pacific. Here it is, and you'll see Invest 97W, which is competing by the looks of things with another system to the east, which does briefly have tropical storm force winds there, but according to GFS at least, 97W itself won't develop into a tropical storm and may not even have the circulation at any point in its life either. There it is, moving off towards the northwest, and the more time goes on, the more indistinguishable it becomes. It's somewhere there near the northern Mariana Islands as we enter next week. Still possibly its own entity, but nothing really going on. Okay, this is the Indian Ocean, the North Indian Ocean, and you can see very little going on here as well. Sometimes we do get Indian Ocean activity, especially at this time of year, especially in the Bay of Bengal. May is one of those significant months sometimes for the Indian Ocean, but at the moment there really isn't anything on the horizon of note. Of course, we're only looking at the wind maps in these scenarios. Local rainfall amounts may be significantly different, and there may be local events that are non-tropical that are of course going on. Okay, well, we've looked at that. Let's go back and take a look at the wind shear. This is the wind shear map near Australia apparently, which is not really of any use to us at all, but I can tell you the wind shear in the area in the Eastern Pacific is marginal, and high wind shear amounts are located nearby. Let's look at the computer models. Hopefully there's some relevant ones here. The HWRF run for Invest 90E, here it is. You can see if there is going to be a track generated from this, it's going to be a pretty short one. If it does become a tropical cyclone, the HWRF thinks so by the looks of things there. Still as a weak tropical storm, but certainly not going to affect any land areas ever. RAL, which is another web source, looking at Invest 90E there, you can see the tracks from several of the models now. Ignore those outliers is my first bit of advice there. Those are statistical models, it's not going to do that. It's going to stay very close to where it is right now, and movement will be very little. The intensity guidance on the right hand side is probably going to be more important. And you can see again it's the statistical models that are erring on the more aggressive side, and I'm not sure I can see it's just the HWRF there, and I think the HMON that is saying minimal tropical storm. All of the other models in that range there are saying nothing. And just for reference, here's the rammed picture as well, the diagnostic comparison, which shows all of the situation here in one neat graphic from RAM. It shows you the wind shear projection there, as stated, expected to rise substantially from this point onwards. Sea surface temperatures around 28 degrees, likely to fall a little bit, and the relative humidity, as we saw on the satellite imagery, starting a decline which will continue. So the storm, the system Invest 90E, has already seen its best days, and it's probably downhill from here, I'm afraid, if you're looking for your letter. I don't think it's here. Just for reference here, the 2018 season in the Eastern Pacific to date, when do we expect our first storm? Climatologically, on a normal year, it would be in the early part of June, maybe the second week. We're expecting it to happen maybe in the last week of May, according to Force 13's forecast. I wouldn't take the exact date lightly there. I would take rather, because obviously the uncertainty is huge around that. And that's just a little reference, and you can also see the previous 3 years on that graphic as well. But as you can see, a long way to go, but that's how it usually pans out according to the black line there. That's the 1971 to 2009 average. We'll have other graphics to show depending on the situation in future bulletins. And on this day in 1954, Typhoon Elsie peaked as a Category 3 storm in the South China Sea, went on to affect China. 1968, Cyclone 1B made landfall in Myanmar. A little bit of discrepancy with some of the data around this time, but I believe that is the storm that killed up to 1,000 people and could have been rather strong, but we don't know. In 1986, Cyclone Billy Lila peaked as a Category 3 storm in the South Indian Ocean. That one was harmlessly out to sea. And as you can see there, several other storms as well. Tropical Storm Anna made landfall in South Carolina in 2015, and the same day, Typhoon Nul struck the Philippines as a Category 5, and we were there for that as well here at Force 13 HQ. You can visit the website force13.com with the latest. You can also find our YouTube page, search Force 13 all in text, subscribe if you haven't already. You can also find our Facebook page under the same name, and we're on Twitter, our handle @Force13. If you'd like to follow us or send us a tweet, we'll respond. You can also follow Force 13 on Skype at our account, and my personal account on Discord, Fool13 at extension 9094 for tropical weather chat.